One evening, Yingning burst into tears and mucus in front of Wang Zifu. He was quite surprised. Sobbing, Yingning said, "In the past, I didn't reveal this because it might have scared and startled you due to its unusual nature. But now I see that both you and my mother-in-law care for me dearly, without any ill intentions. So, perhaps it's not harmful to tell the truth? I was born as a fox. When my mother left, she entrusted me to a ghostly mother. And we've lived together for over a decade, leading to where we are today. I have no siblings to rely on except for you. My birth mother suffered solitude and hardships in the mountains, and couldn't find anyone to pity her, to rebury her body and be laid to rest with her. Her grievances must be countless in the netherworld. If you're willing to go through the trouble and expense, you could ease the pain of the spirits below. Maybe this could stop people from drowning and abandoning their daughters." Wang Zifu agreed to Yingning's request, though he worried about finding the grave amidst the overgrown grass. However, Yingning assured him not to worry. They picked a date and set out with a carriage carrying the coffin. In the wild grass that stretched as far as the eye could see, Yingning directed them to the grave's location. They eventually found Wang's mother's body still intact. Yingning sobbed and mourned over the body. Later, they brought Wang's mother's remains back and found the burial site for the Qin family, where they were laid to rest together. That night, Wang Zifu dreamt that Wang's mother came to express her gratitude. Upon waking, he shared the dream with Yingning. She said, "I also saw her last night, and advised her not to frighten you." Wang Zifu regretted not asking her to stay longer. Yingning said, "She's a spirit. There are many living people here, and the energy is strong. She couldn't stay for long." Wang Zifu also asked about Xiaorong, and Yingning said, "She's also a fox, very clever. The fox mother left her to take care of me, often feeding me. I'll always remember her kindness. I asked the ghost mother yesterday, and she said Xiaorong is already married." From then on, every year on Qingming Festival, Wang Zifu and his wife would visit the Qin family's grave, never failing to pay respects and perform tomb-sweeping rites. After a year, Yingning gave birth to a son who was not afraid of strangers and would laugh when he saw people. He inherited his mother's demeanor. Yi Shishi commented, "Yingning's seemingly carefree, chirpy smile makes her appear thoughtless. However, her playful antics by the wall also demonstrate her cunning and cleverness." As for her profound longing for her ghostly mother, a stark contrast from wild laughter to heart-rending sobs. My Yingning probably uses laughter to conceal her true feelings. I've heard that there's a type of grass in the mountains called laughter-inducing grass. When people smell it, they can't stop laughing. If a plant of this grass were placed in a room, it would outshine mimosa and forget-me-nots. And as for the language-understanding flower, its coquettish behavior is truly repugnant. One evening, when they were half drunk, Kong Xueli's gaze fixated on Zhang Nu. Gongzi had already understood his intentions and said, "This maid was raised by my father. Since you are far from home and without a wife, I have been planning for you day and night. I've been thinking of finding a beautiful wife for you." Kong Xueli replied, "If you truly want to help me, it must be someone like Zhang Nu." Gongzi chuckled, "You've truly become an uncommon and eccentric person. If you find Zhang Nu beautiful, your desires are easily satisfied." After more than half a year, Kong Xueli decided to go to the countryside for leisure. When he reached the main gate, he saw that it was locked. He asked Gongzi for the reason, and Gongzi explained, "My father is afraid that some friends might disturb his peace of mind, so he's closed the doors to visitors." Upon hearing this, Kong Xueli felt at ease. It was a hot and humid midsummer, and they moved their study to a pavilion. Suddenly, a swelling like a peach formed on Kong Xueli's chest. Overnight, it grew to the size of a bowl. He was in excruciating pain, groaning continuously. Gongzi visited him constantly, ignoring meals and sleep. After a few days, the pain intensified, and he could hardly eat or drink. Taigong also came to visit, and father and son sighed in mutual understanding. Gongzi said, "I was considering your condition the night before last, and I realized that only my younger sister Jiaona can treat it. I sent someone to fetch her from our grandmother's house. Why hasn't she arrived yet? As he spoke, the attendant entered and announced, Miss Na has arrived, along with aunt and Songgu. Father and son hurried into the inner chambers. In an instant, Gongzi led his sister Jiaona to see Kong Xueli. Jiaona, around 13 or 14 years old, was strikingly beautiful, intelligent, graceful, and charming. Upon seeing her beauty, Kong Xueli forgot his groans, and his spirits were lifted. Gongzi introduced his sister saying, This is my good friend. We are as close as brothers. Sister, you must treat him well. Jiaona suppressed her shyness, draped her long sleeves, and leaned over the bed to diagnose Kong Xueli's condition. As her hands touched his skin, Kong Xueli detected a fragrance more enchanting than orchids emanating from her. Jiaona smiled and said, This kind of ailment originates from the heart channels. Although the condition is critical, it can be treated. However, the skin around the abscess has already solidified and needs to be excised. She removed a gold bracelet from her arm and placed it on Kong Xueli's ailment. Slowly, she pressed it down. The abscess, protruding over an inch and extending beyond the bracelet, was confined within the gold. The red and swollen part of the abscess, like a bowl before, was now enclosed within the bracelet. Jiaona then uncovered her arm, drew a delicate knife, thinner than paper, and held it in her hand. With one hand pressing the bracelet and the other hand gripping the knife, she gently cut along the base of the abscess. Purple blood flowed out, staining the beddings. Kong Xueli, infatuated with Jiaona's beauty, felt no pain. On the contrary, he worried that she might finish the procedure too quickly, and that he wouldn't have time to be close to her for a while longer. Before long, she had removed all the necrotic tissue, leaving rounded lumps that resembled excised tree knots. Jiaona brought water, washed the wound, and then spat out a red pill, about the size of a marble. Placing it on the cut surface, she pressed and rotated it with her hand. After one turn, Kong Xueli felt heat rising. After another, a gentle itch. By the third turn, he felt a refreshing coolness permeating his bones. Jiaona put the red pill back into her mouth and declared, It's healed. Then she swiftly departed. Kong Xueli sprang up to chase after her and express his gratitude. He felt as if his prolonged suffering had vanished in an instant. However, he couldn't shake off his intense longing for Jiaona's beauty and lost control of his feelings. From then on, Kong Xueli sat brooding, closed off from the world, feeling restless. Gongzi had already discerned his dilemma and said, I've been searching for a long time for you, and I've finally found a suitable young lady. Kong Xueli asked, Who is it? Gongzi replied, She's also a relative of mine. After deep contemplation, Kong Xueli simply said, It's not necessary. Then, he faced the wall and recited lines from a poem by Yuan Zhen. Once there was an ocean, now it's difficult to be considered water. Other than Wushan, nothing else can be considered cloud. Gongzi understood his meaning. He said, My father admires your great talents, and has often thought of forming a marital alliance. However, I only have a younger sister, Jiaona, and she's still too young. I also have a cousin, Ah Song, who is 18 years old, and has a pleasant appearance. If you don't believe me, Song cousin visits the pavilion every day. You can wait in the front room to catch a glimpse of her. Kong Xueli followed Gongzi's advice and went there, and indeed, he saw Jiaona and a beautiful woman. This woman had delicate eyebrows that curved like silkworm antennae, and her slender feet wore phoenix-headed embroidered shoes. She and Jiaona were equally stunning. Kong Xueli was overjoyed and asked Gongzi to be the matchmaker. The next day, Gongzi emerged from the inner chambers and congratulated Kong Xueli, saying it's settled. They cleaned another courtyard and held a wedding ceremony for Kong Xueli. That night, drums and music resounded, creating an unusually festive atmosphere. Kong Xueli felt as if a celestial being from the moon had come to share his bed, suspecting that the Guanhan Palace was right before his eyes. Perhaps it was no longer in the celestial heavens. After the marriage, Kong Xueli felt extremely content. One night, Gongzi said to Kong Xueli, I will never forget your guidance in enhancing my knowledge. Recently, single Gongzi returned from a lawsuit and urgently wants the property back. My family intends to leave this place and head west. It seems that it will be difficult for us to meet again, and so I am deeply distressed by this parting." Kong Xueli agreed to follow his family westward. Gongzi advised him to return to his hometown in Shandong, but Kong Xueli found this difficult. Gongzi reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, I can send you away immediately." Soon after, Taigong led Song Nian to them and presented 100 taels of gold to Kong Xueli. Gongzi clasped the hands of Kong Xueli and his wife, instructing them to close their eyes. Suddenly, they were lifted into the air by an ethereal force, feeling the rushing wind in their ears. After a long while, Gongzi said, "We've arrived." Kong Xueli opened his eyes and saw that he had indeed returned to his hometown. It was then that he realized that Gongzi was not human. He joyfully opened the door to his house. His mother was astonished to see his beautiful wife, and the whole family was overjoyed. But when they turned to look, Gongzi had already vanished. Song Niang dutifully served her mother-in-law and demonstrated her beauty and virtue, becoming renowned far and wide. Later, Kong Xueli passed the imperial examination and was appointed as an official in charge of the Yan'an prefecture. He took his family with him to his new position. His mother couldn't accompany him due to the long journey. Song Niang gave birth to a son named Jiaona. However, Kong Xueli's career took a turn when he offended a high-ranking official and was dismissed from his position. He found himself unable to return to his hometown. One day, he coincidentally met a handsome young man while hunting on the outskirts. The young man was riding a black colt and frequently turned back to look at Kong Xueli. Upon closer inspection, Kong Xueli realized it was Gongzi. He hastily reined in his horse, and the two recognized each other, emotions of both sorrow and joy intertwining. Gongzi invited Kong Xueli to return home with him. They arrived at a village where trees provided dense shade from the sun. The entrance of Gongzi's house was adorned with golden studs, signifying a prestigious family. Kong Xueli inquired about the well-being of his sister-in-law, Jiao Na. He learned that she had already married, and also that his mother-in-law had passed away. He felt deeply moved and saddened. He spent the night and returned home, later returning with his wife. Coincidentally, Jiao Na also arrived. She playfully tossed Kong Xueli's son in the air and said, "Your sister-in-law is stirring up trouble at my house." Kong Xueli thanked her for her previous kindness, to which Jiaona replied with a smile, "Brother-in-law, you've become prestigious. Has the wound healed? Does it still hurt?" Her husband, Wu Lang, also came to greet Kong Xueli. They spent 2 nights there before departing. One day, Gongzi appeared distressed and asked Kong Xueli, "Could you save us from impending disaster?" Although Kong Xueli didn't know what was about to happen, he immediately offered to help. Gongzi rushed out and summoned his entire family to pay respects to Kong Xueli, who was greatly surprised and inquired about the reason. Gongzi explained, "We are not humans, but foxes. A calamity is approaching, and if you're willing to sacrifice yourself, we can all survive. If not, please take your child and leave to avoid getting entangled." Kong Xueli swore to share their fate. Gongzi instructed Kong Xueli to stand at the door holding a sword, and advised him, even when the thunder strikes, don't move. Kong Xueli followed Gongzi's instructions. Dark clouds gathered, turning daytime into night. Thunder sounded, shaking the mountains, and a fierce storm erupted, uprooting ancient trees. Though Kong Xueli's senses were numbed by the deafening noise and blinding flashes, he stood steadfast. Amidst the dense smoke and black fog, a monstrous creature emerged. With sharp beak and long claws, it pulled a person from a deep hole and ascended along with the smoke. Kong Xueli glimpsed at the person's attire and shoes and felt it resembled Jiao Na. He leapt forward, wielding his sword against the monster, inadvertently dropping an object. Suddenly, another thunderous explosion occurred, knocking Kong Xueli down. He lost consciousness. After a while, the sky cleared, and Jiaona gradually woke up on her own. Seeing Kong Xueli lying beside her lifeless, she burst into tears, lamenting, "Kong Lang died for me, why am I still alive?" Song Niang emerged from the pit as well, and they together carried Kong Xueli back. Jiaona instructed Song Niang to support Kong Xueli's head and used a golden hairpin to pry open his mouth. She used her hands to hold Kong Xueli's cheeks, and with her tongue, She transferred a red pill from her mouth to his and blew air into his mouth. The red pill, carried by the air, made a faint tinkling sound as it entered Kong Xueli's throat. After a while, he miraculously woke up. Seeing his relatives gathered around, it was as if he had awakened from a dream. The family was reunited, no longer in fear, but rather filled with boundless joy. Kong Xueli believed that the tomb was no place to stay for long. He suggested that everyone return to his hometown together. The entire household applauded this idea, except for Jiaona, who wasn't pleased. Kong Xueli asked her to go with Wu Lang. However, Jiaona worried that her in-laws wouldn't agree to leave their young son. They couldn't reach a decision all day. Suddenly, a young servant from Wu Lang's family arrived, panting and sweating. Everyone anxiously questioned him until they learned that Wu Lang's family had also encountered a disaster on the same day, and the whole family had perished. Upon hearing this, Jiaona was devastated, crying incessantly. Everyone comforted her. Only then did the plan to return to Kong Xueli's hometown solidify. After spending a few days in the city to settle matters, Kong Xueli returned home and offered an abandoned garden to Gongzi's family, locking the gate when he wasn't present, opening it only for himself and Song Niang. Kong Xueli spent time with Gongzi and Jiaona like a close-knit family, playing chess, drinking, conversing, and celebrating. Kong Xueli's son, Jiaona, grew up, possessing a handsome appearance and the demeanor of a fox. When he went to the city, people knew him as the son of a fox. Yi Shishi remarked, "I'm not envious of Kong Xueli having a beautiful wife, but I envy his intimate friendship. Gazing upon her beauty could erase hunger, and hearing her voice could bring a smile. Having such a good friend, they would drink, converse, and share their thoughts, a spiritual affection far superior to carnal love."